Hello, lovelies. You're listening to episode 78 of the Broken Enchantments podcast, written and read by Elizabeth Wheatley. That's me. I hope you enjoy this week's episode. Be sure to check out my Patreon for next week's episode, now available. You can check out the links below. Happy listening. The Lord Argetallam's presence flared in her consciousness as he dragged her back. She should have told them the moment she felt him. She should have made them run. There was the scrape of metal as the elves and Armandius drew their swords, but they were already surrounded. Not 2 sword lengths from where she stood, Cerilius had both Carcatan drawn. There were at least 12 highly trained invulnerables against 3 elves and 1 High Lord who had just been released from prison. There was no chance. "It was my fault," Janir gushed. "Let them go, please. I'll do whatever you want, anything." "Silence," the Lord Argetallam snarled, yanking back on her hair. "I want no more promises from you." "I was coming back," Janir whimpered. "I swear I just wanted to see that they—" This time, the Lord Argetallam didn't speak. He snapped her head back so far that she could hardly breathe. Streaks shot across her vision and she choked, trying to inhale. "Where is the chalice?" he demanded. Saoven shouted a curse in Elvish. The Lord Argetallam surveyed Janir as though reading a list of sins on her forehead. When he looked at her like that, she had the uncanny feeling that he knew exactly what she was thinking. "Where is the chalice?" The Lord Argetallam roared, loosening his grip on her just enough that she could speak. "I don't have it," she gasped. "I swear, I just came here to—" He snapped her head back again. "I know she told you the chalice is here, whole once again. Did she mention she will stand beside me when Brevia falls?" "You lie." Saoven barely wasted a second. "Clearly you don't know her as well as you think." "Janir." "I'm sorry, Saoven," Janir whimpered, sounding so weak and feeble she was ashamed. "He was going to kill you all if I didn't." The Lord Argetallam purred. "It's quite a creature of honesty you have raised here, Caerson." Armandius bristled, never once taking his eyes off the other man. "Release her, you dog, or I shall—" "I hardly think you have any say in the matter. She is my daughter," the Lord Argetallam coolly responded, straightening his back. Armandius boiled. The Lord Argetallam had taken Armandius's wife, kept her in captivity for 10 years, and begotten a child on her. Fate had arranged for Janir to be raised as Armandius's daughter, but then the Lord Argetallam had taken her entire memory of that. Now there was no way that either was going to let the other leave the room alive. The Lord Argetallam released his grip on Janir's hair. He ran a single lock between his fingers in a gesture anyone might have mistaken as affectionate. Janir coughed. Her neck ached and her scalp stung. Cerilius determinedly did not look at her. He avoided her the same way he had kept his eyes from Amilla. Saoven seemed ready to rip apart the Lord Argetallam with his teeth, but Luana's cautioning hand on his shoulder held the young elf back. They were surrounded by Argetallams. Any move against the leader would be suicide. Carlisle stood looking from Janir to the Lord Argetallam, to Saoven, and back to Janir, like a puppy facing down a lion. His scrawny fists were rigid at his sides. He fidgeted anxiously. "Were you sneaking off?" the Lord Argetallam asked. "No," she stammered, trying not to let the tears clog her throat. No, I swear, I was just going to get them out, and then I was coming back. But I have no way of knowing that for sure, do I? He gripped the back of her neck, fingers digging into her flesh. Janir whimpered. She squeezed her eyes shut to avoid looking at the others. If Saoven, Carlisle, and Armandius saw how much it was hurting her, they would do something stupid, and stupid would get them killed. Fight me, Armandius bellowed, or will you stand and hide behind your men like the sniveling desert rat you are? Armandius. Velasquez lowered his own weapon and grabbed his friend's arm. Armandius, do not be a fool. Please. Gwenna laid a delicate hand on his other arm. Please, she begged. My lord, be reasonable. I have waited 18 years for this. Do not speak to me of reason. Armandius shoved them both off. For a moment, Janir feared that her foster father would charge the Lord Argetallam with his bare hands. Fight me, Armandius repeated. Or do you stand as a coward before your people? A deep rumble of laughter burst from the Lord Argetallam as he threw back his head. Janir did not remember hearing her father laugh before, and it was petrifying. You think you can turn my people against me so easily? The Lord Argetallam smirked. I am the core, the matrix that binds the whole of the Argetallam race, and you think you can turn them against me with a word of challenge. The Lord Argetallam laughed again, and this time most his warriors echoed him. Their laughter echoed through the hall like the music of death. Cerilius didn't join, and neither did Drusilla. Did you know Ariana never once attempted to leave me? The Lord Argetallam inhaled a slow breath. Even before she conceived. Instead of another outburst, which Janir had been expecting, Armandius suddenly went still. He didn't move. One might almost think he had been turned to stone. The Lord Argetallam motioned Cerilius forward. Make sure she stays out of this. Obediently, Cerilius sheathed his carcatan and stood guard over Janir. To her surprise, he pulled her to her feet. He took up a post at her back, grasping one wrist in a hold secure as any shackle. Janir felt as helpless as she had with Mulcalar's blade to her neck, held back and unable to change the course of fate. Fight me, Armandius repeated, his voice dropping to little more than a rumble. He threw aside his sword's scabbard. It would only get in the way. The Lord Argetallam seemed to consider that for a moment. Why would I fight you, Brevian? I could have you on the floor, begging for mercy with but a word to one of my warriors. Because Armandius's every muscle was taut as a bowstring. You're the only man alive who hates me as much as I hate you. The Lord Argetallam grinned, and looked pointedly to his warriors. The Argetallam Mortons did not show amusement or otherwise. Why would I hate you, Lord Caerson? You have taken nothing from me that cannot be taken back. Armandius roared wordlessly and charged with his sword drawn and ready to cleave the Lord Argetallam in two. The High Lord moved like a demon, but he had not gone more than 3 steps when his sword flew from his grip, yanked away by invisible hands. The blade flew backward and clattered to the far wall as though it had been thrown. Really, Lord Caerson? The Lord Argetallam sneered, drawing an enchanted weapon against an invulnerable. Janir's father cocked his head in scorn. Janir's heart hammered against her sternum. Don't, she whispered, not even knowing who she pleaded with. The Argetallam Mortons swarmed Armandius. Velasquez and Luana moved to help him, but were stopped by a barrier of invulnerables in black Morsane armor. The elves held their swords at the ready, considering an attack. They were outnumbered, but it was either fight or face the Lord Argetallam's mercy. No. The Lord Argetallam shouted, Hold! Seeming confused, the Argetallams obeyed nonetheless. The warriors who had lunged for Armandius backed off like well-trained dogs. The High Lord stood untouched. In the distance, the palace had gone quiet. The Morsanes must be contained. Her father wouldn't be here personally with her if it wasn't. The Lord Argetallam's voice resumed its usual cool timbre. If the man wants revenge so desperately, who am I to deny him the chance? He waved for one of his retainers to pick up Armandius's fallen sword. A young Mortana quickly scooped up the weapon. My lord. Drusilla blinked, coming to the Lord Argetallam's side. Morton Canicade, fetch us 2 swords. The Lord Argetallam commanded, not answering Drusilla. And make sure they're sharp. Several of the other Argetallams in the room appeared taken aback, but none questioned it. Not even Drusilla uttered another word. Janir tensed. What did her father have in mind? A one-on-one duel while he had the upper hand? It made no sense. Armandius seemed to be just as surprised as everyone else, but that didn't dim the glow of bloodlust in his eyes. Velasquez and Luana shifted uneasily. If Armandius was killed, who would rule in Greenhaven in his stead? He had no living relatives. They were all either long dead or related by marriage. There would be no one to carry on the third into the next generation, and that could very easily upset the delicate balance of peace that the 7 swords had assured since their forging. Canicade returned, bearing 2 sheathed weapons. They were plain, unadorned, and unspelled. Their hilts were wrapped in simple leather, but they appeared to be of a sound make and after the Brevian fashion. Apprehensively, he marched down the dim hall. Give Caerson his choice, the Lord Argetallam commanded, nodding toward the High Lord. With a small amount of hesitation, Canicade offered both swords to Armandius. Janir feared that Armandius might harm Canicade, but it seemed he was too focused on her father to bother with an underling. Armandius chose one of the weapons after testing the weight and examining the blade. The Lord Argetallam took the remaining weapon from Canicade and casually stepped toward his adversary, relaxed and yet poised for action. The Lord Argetallam swung his sword in the air, testing its balance. Was all he said. Armandius was a master swordsman. Janir knew that well enough. She had heard it from Carlisle and a dozen others and shouldn't have been worried, but the Lord Argetallam certainly knew that as well, and was allowing this anyway. The Lord Argetallam was many things, but not a fool. He would not have stepped up to this challenge unless he thought he would prevail. A sword was not the usual weapon of an Argetallam, but her father appeared comfortable enough with one. Why don't we step into the gallery, Caerson? The Lord Argetallam suggested. Armandius chanced a glance over his shoulder, though he never once let the Lord Argetallam out of his line of sight. Sure enough, there was an empty gallery at their backs, plain and designed mainly for function. During the day it served as a devotionals room. Now it was deserted. My lord. Drusilla stepped up beside the Lord Argetallam and laid a hand on his forearm. She dropped her voice, but Janir was still close enough to hear. My lord, what are you doing? The Lord Argetallam ignored her. Whatever happens, he drawled, still examining his weapon, is between Caerson and I. This was met with silence from the other Argetallams. You are not to interfere, the Lord Argetallam commanded. Any of you.
You have been listening to Broken Enchantments, written and read by Elizabeth Wheatley. Don't forget to check out my Patreon for early access to episodes, bonus content, and lots of patrons-only freebies. You can learn more at elizabethwheatley.com. And don't forget to subscribe on your favorite podcast platform or YouTube. I'll see you next time.